Star Trek's Kelvin movie timeline has officially been destroyed in franchise canon. The final nail has been driven into the alternate universe warp core. The Kelvin timeline, the alternate reality introduced in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 2009, has been officially destroyed in Star Trek franchise canon. While the rebooted universe brought fresh faces and high-octane energy to the long-running franchise, recent developments across Star Trek, Picard, Strange New Worlds, and various canonical statements have closed the rift that once connected two timelines. The message is now crystal clear. The Kelvin timeline no longer has a place in the current narrative. For those who boarded the starship late, the Kelvin timeline began when Nero, a Romulan from the future, traveled back in time and destroyed the USS Kelvin, killing George Kirk James T., Kirk's father, and altering history. This time-altering event created an alternate universe that allowed for new stories with familiar characters, younger, reimagined versions of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and the rest of the Enterprise crew. The 2009 Star Trek movie, Star Trek Into Darkness 2013, and Star Trek Beyond 2016 formed the trilogy that exists within this alternate reality. But now, it seems Starfleet Command has closed the books on this alternate branch of continuity. Canon killed the Kelvin timeline. The downfall of the Kelvin timeline has been a slow, quiet one. First, the lack of follow-up films played a huge role. Star Trek Beyond was released nearly a decade ago, and despite numerous promises, rumors, and script announcements, a fourth movie has never materialized. While the cast, including Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, Carl Urban, and Simon Pegg, has repeatedly expressed interest, the stars never aligned or were never funded for a proper return. However, the real canonical disintegration of the Kelvin universe occurred through recent entries in the Prime timeline, most notably Star Trek, Picard Season 2 and Season 3, and Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. In Picard Season 2, the concept of branching alternate timelines was explored extensively through the manipulation of time by Q and the use of a divergent Confederation timeline. The mechanics of these splits were examined with a specificity that subtly undermined the necessity of the Kelvin timeline as a separate canonized entity. In essence, Picard's writers redefined how Star Trek handles alternate histories and universes, and the Kelvin version simply didn't fit within the new model. More tellingly, Picard Season 3 brought back multiple legacy characters, culminating in a deeply nostalgic finale that reaffirmed the Prime universe as the universe. There was no reference to the alternate universe. And perhaps more significantly, the show subtly reinforced that James T., Kirk's Prime reality remains intact and untouched by Nero's past incursion. But the dagger twist came in Strange New World Season 2, Episode 3, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This episode explored alternate realities and branching timelines again, explicitly noting how time travel can fork history in unpredictable ways. But unlike the Kelvin timeline, it showed the consequences of these events within a controlled and limited framework. The universe didn't splinter in such a clean-cut way as Abrams' version implied. The franchise moved on. Even outside of canon, the franchise's creative energies have clearly shifted away from the Kelvin verse. All current Trek TV shows, Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, Prodigy, and Strange New Worlds, are deeply rooted in the Prime timeline. There has been no crossover, mention, or narrative linkage back to the Kelvin universe. The only character who has ever straddled both worlds was Spock, portrayed by both Leonard Nimoy Prime and Zachary Quinto Kelvin. With Nimoy's passing and Quinto's Spock seemingly shelved, the connective tissue has dissolved. Even recent merchandising, tie-in novels, and official Trek social media platforms have focused exclusively on the Prime timeline. The Kelvin crew's absence is palpable, a silence that speaks volumes. In other words, if the franchise doesn't mention you, doesn't build on you, and reshapes canon in a way that makes your existence redundant, you've been canonically erased. Why it matters and why it doesn't. The official destruction of the Kelvin timeline might sting fans who enjoyed its flashier, blockbuster energy. The Abrams reboot was responsible for revitalizing the franchise after Star Trek. Nemesis and Enterprise failed to ignite much,